our goal is to make sure that we don't disrupt too much.
Okay.
Our goal is to make sure that we're redesigning and enabling the current economy to be able to operate on a digital version of the eCedi. Today we have notes.
Yes.
eCedi notes, we have eCedi coins.
Right.
The eCedi is a digital version, a dematerialized version of that. So it is not cryptocurrency. It is not a stable coin.
Okay.
It is eCedi. And often I like to, I hear a lot of conversations and it keeps getting mixed up.
I think it's good that you make that distinction.
Absolutely. In fact, most CBDC, a central bank digital currency, does not have to be a cryptocurrency. It doesn't have to use cryptography.
Okay.
It does not even have to. But what we have sought to do is to, and what we're piloting now, is a digital version of the eCedi, which will be secure. It's not, typically you ask the question, can it be converted to eCedi? No, it is eCedi. It is fiat. It's legal tender. It can be accepted anywhere. It can be used by anyone. And therefore, in that future, where your lifestyle is digital, much more digital than it is today, you're no longer using it for services. You have to convert the physical form of cash into digital before. Now, we provide that physical form of cash. If we could support, and this is where I bring up the point about enablement. So as part of this pilot, there's a mobile money operator, there's a Fintech, IT consortium, and there's a bank. Because down the line, these are the people who are just like today. They take these funds and spend it. They help you spend it as consumers. And when you think of the digital eCedi, I think you can just think of it very simply from its usage perspective. Today, you can put cash in your bank account and spend it. You can also put cash in your wallet and spend it.
Right.
Our goal has been to be able to replicate both. So you can have your eCedi in a bank account or a wallet from an authorized institution, or you could also have it in an offline wallet as you would have cash in your pocket.
Okay.
And we spent a great deal of time working on the back end to make sure that the right governance, security frameworks, the regulatory implications, the anti-money laundering and terrorism financing concerns, all these aspects have been addressed.
Okay.
But one aspect that the governor recently spoke about, which has to do with the offline testing in Sefiasa, for instance, that's near and dear to our hearts because it specifically is looking at the financial inclusion aspects of our society. We have several of the members of our society who are not, within the financial sector, the formal financial sector, largely because I think mobile money, banks, and fintechs have done a great job in this country in helping push success from a financial inclusion standpoint, bringing people into the formal financial sector, giving people access to financial services. But unfortunately, we're restricted to where the network ends.
Yes.
Now, beyond the network, what happens next? Right? And there are very few countries who perhaps have 100% network coverage. They are still businesses as telecom companies and the rest. So we understand, and government is always working with them to extend coverage. And so we went and did an objective assessment of the country and picked the location and went out there and tested an offline version of the eCedi where I can pay Romeo, Romeo can pay you, he can pay Ellie, Ellie pays Justice, and he can pay me back in an offline environment. Now think about it. If you take a smallholder farmer, that farmer is actually conducting transactions in their community.
Yes.
They're buying salt, they're buying oil, they're buying rice, and they're buying inputs. They're buying fertilizers, they're buying seeds. The problem is, if a bank or a lending institution goes there, you don't have the records on that farmer to lend to them. How do you get information on them? That does not mean they don't have an economic footprint. It's just not visible to you.
Right.
So if we could replace the means with which they're paying, which is the physical notes and coins, perhaps with a digital version of the eCedi, now suddenly, even within that offline environment, when a bank or a mobile money operator or anyone goes in there, with, of course, the consent of the customer, they can access the customer's transaction records and begin to create access, begin to build products such as lending, savings, and investment products for them. The education part is another aspect that I think is more broader, but at least you begin to solve the two key elements of financial inclusion. And that's why that market linkage is important for us.
And Stephen Brady wants to know if government is really going to educate the public about the eCedi.
Yes. So, as I mentioned, the eCedi is taking place. The pilot is taking place. This is a pilot, by the way. One of the interesting and positive observations that I've made is people have assumed we're going live permanently now.
No.
It's a pilot. It's a pilot to understand, and our goal was very clear in the governor's 2019 press release and press conference statement, where he said, we're going to explore an eCedi pilot in a sandbox environment to see, we want to know the feasibility of its implementation in the future and make a decision on it. And so for the offline version that we're testing in Sehri Asafo, there's a lot of education happening where we're testing various elements to it. For the online part in Accra as well, we mentioned IT Consortium, Vodafone Cash, and Cal Bank are all institutions that have been announced as being part of this pilot. The goal is to be able to test, a few institutions and see how it works, right? Because when we print cash, we make it available to these to commercial banks. That's how we distribute cash into the economy anyway. So we want to be able to do that, but also create an avenue where innovators and banks, mobile money operators, and fintechs can actually plug into this and see what they can also build on top of it, because it's currency, right? We're just providing the basics, so the innovation can spin off on top of that. But in terms of education, there will be significant edification. There's actually a focus on that and a plan around that. Budgets, from what we have heard, is not always about having a large funded budget for things that are high topic and high interest like this. The virality nature is actually quite interesting sometimes. I mean, I'm seeing the news coming in and out about the eCedi, and I think the goal is to make sure that we're engaging stakeholders to understand what it means for all of them. One of our fundamental guiding points is to make sure that we're not making people worse off collectively. So whether it's mobile money players, whether it's fintechs, whether it's banks, the goal is to make sure that everyone is better off, even consumers, because the cost of their operations, they all ride on banking infrastructure. And that's a purposefully crafted regulatory framework. But we also face the reality that liquidity management, for instance, in rural areas is expensive. And that ultimately translates into the cost of the operations and to the consumer. So if we can provide a more efficient form factor, a dematerialized version of the notes and coins that everyone can use, the ultimate cost savings from the bank's level, from the fintech's level, from the mobile money operators level, between competition and innovation will translate to the consumer, and it gives consumers choice and much more affordable means of making payments and receiving payments if you're a merchant, for instance.
We're talking about cost of operation.